All right, welcome back. We are now going to get into a little Major League Soccer and a little World Soccer as the MLS season kicked off this past weekend. A new year in the world of MLS, and boy, what a change. A lot of changes going on in MLS for the good, from the media rights perspective, from the expansion perspective, and potentially a world superhero might be coming to town at some point down the road. So no better person to talk some MLS and some Inter-Miami soccer than Ian Hest. He's a broadcaster down in South Florida. He's the founder of the Heron Outlet, which covers all things Inter-Miami, and he covers all things South Florida sports for us here on the Powers on Sports podcast. Appreciate you joining us again, Ian.
Always good to see you, man.
All right, before we get to some soccer, I got a couple non-soccer questions for you related to South Florida.
I knew you would.
Give us a little Tua update. What's kind of the sense of Tua's future in Miami? Obviously, we all know that he had the concussion issues to end the year there. Talk to us about what's the any thoughts from the organization. Is Tua the guy moving forward, or are they going to keep their eyes open in the quarterback market?
Yeah, I still think that he's the guy moving forward. I think that in the NFL, you're never you're never sure with what you've got. Even, Aaron Rodgers has been dealing with this right now. So if someone like him is never too safe or dealing with his situation, I think that you're always, as an organization, wanting to look and see what you got out there. But Tua is the guy moving forward. I think that with a prolonged offseason, it's going to allow his body to heal. Obviously, we're still learning more about what that entails, and the science on this has grown tremendously. Still has much more to go on it, and hopefully, for every player's safety, that they're knowing what the ramifications of playing football is. I think when it comes to Tua, he's done a lot of things right in his own maturation. You've probably heard about him, learning judo and taking better care of how he falls down. These little things that we maybe not have heard in the past that quarterbacks probably should have been aware of. It almost makes like common sense after you hear it, but maybe we were just overlooking something like that. So I think, he's a new father as well. He has talked about that. I think on Super Bowl weekend, he was talking about that when he was out there. So there are important things in his life that I think he knows what's best for him. And I'm sure he's in, constant contact with the organization. They're working to make sure that he has a long and healthy future in the NFL.
All right, let's go to the hoops circuit down there in Miami. The Heat have kind of been meddling middle of the Eastern Conference most of the year. Got about 20 games left of the regular season. They did go out and sign Kevin Love about a week ago, so maybe that a little help for the playoff run. What is the sense of the Heat down there? Do they think that the Heat can be a contender, or are they just kind of maybe win a series and get knocked out in the second round kind of scenario down in Miami?
Yeah, you get that sense amongst the fans, unfortunately, because the Heat always pride themselves on being one of these premier organizations in the NBA, that they're always a contender. They don't do rebuilding years. Rebuilding years are ones that almost normally should look like what it is right now, where you're in the 6th or the 7th seed in the East. This team is good. It struggles to stay healthy, though, and they can go very long periods without scoring. Bam Adebayo is still blossoming into the superstar that he is expected to be, who a lot of fans believe he is, but that does come with needing to get to that upper echelon. He's right there on the precipice. Probably should be Defensive Player of the Year, if not in large contention for it. One of the best, if not the best defender in the NBA. And you love what Jimmy Butler has been able to provide for you. Tyler Hero now signing that huge deal needs to be that constant, consistent scorer for them that at times, he shows flashes of, but it isn't night in and night out right now. This team maybe has a ceiling as the 5th seed at this point with only about 20 games left in the regular season. They probably could catch the Nets and the Knicks, seeing as they've got so many games against them in hand right now. And playing them head to head. But past that, you got a first round series against the Cavs. Probably, if that's the case, yeah, you could win that. But I don't think this team is going to challenge the Celtics or the Bucks for the top team heading out of the East.
Is the Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra era getting stale at all down there? It seems like, Spoelstra's been down there forever. Riley's been down there forever. Does it ever seem like that's kind of getting stale, and maybe the ownership would look just to shake things up a little bit from a voice perspective?
Spoelstra, no. Riley, I mean, it's tough to say because he sort of is this figure that has done so much for basketball in South Florida, right? And not only being the head coach that led them to all those playoff runs in the 90s, not only being in charge of this whole run with the 3 championships as well, but he is just such a the Godfather, as everybody calls him, right?
Right.
And so it's difficult now that I think the frustration has come, if you want to say stale, with the lack of movement, with the lack of ambition to go out and get guys. You could maybe say that that's because they don't have necessarily the assets to acquire someone that would be up there, like the Donovan Mitchells that we saw move right in the offseason. That was a name that they were linked to for a long time. They have sort of been stuck in this non-moving to get better. It's why the Kevin Love move. That's why Cody Zeller as well, who's performed very well in spot minutes in his short time with the team. That's why people got sort of excited about that, because you look at it, the Miami Heat were one of only 3 teams, I believe, the Bulls, and I'm forgetting the last one off the top of my head right now, that did not acquire a single player in a trade at the deadline this year. So like you don't think of the Miami Heat standing pat like that,
right.
Pun intended. But with Pat Riley, they have in the past couple of years. And so that's sort of, I guess, where the frustration is to, hey, let's get this moving. Let's get back to being the top team.
Okay, let's go from one non-stale organization to another league that's clearly not stale and doing a lot of new things as we enter, what is this, year 26 of MLS or 27?
26, I think.
I think year 26 of MLS. The league has had a lot of changes in the last six months to a year, as far as from, again, TV rights and playoff formats, expansion team. Let's start with the TV rights deal. Obviously, if you haven't seen, ESPN is no longer in the mix in MLS. They have MLS signed an exclusive deal with Apple TV, which was kind of revolutionary, where all their content and activity will be on Apple TV. I did see there's a little bit of linear stuff on Fox still on broadcast TV, but any streaming content, anything is going to be on Apple TV. Give the fans a little summary of the agreement they have with Apple and what that means for the average fan that wants to watch their favorite MLS team.
Yeah, revolutionary is a great way to put it. 10 years, $2.5 billion. That's with a B. So definitely Apple getting their foot into the streaming game and the sports streaming game. You saw what they did with MLB last year, and that was a little bit interesting. This is different. This is more of like an NFL Sunday ticket package that you have for the MLS. So it's a separate purchase that you make on top of your Apple TV for about $140 for the entire season. Now, what do you get with that? You get absolutely no blackout. So let's say you're, living in Tampa and you don't necessarily have a team within an hour of you, or you're in Phoenix, or you're in, outside of Detroit or Ohio, right? Or somewhere like that. You don't necessarily have a team close to you, no blackouts. You can pick any team just like you can in the English Premier League. I follow Tottenham without ever going to London. I've never been there before, yet I still have that connection. So I think that'll provide that for fans league-wide and nationwide to really get involved in it. They have this really cool new show called MLS 360 that is a little bit like the Red Zone channel, which you'd think for soccer is a little difficult. It wound up being really, really entertaining last weekend. And the league believes that this is where all leagues are going to be heading. And so you've seen it with the EPL and Peacock as well. You've seen it with Champions League and Paramount Plus. So soccer has sort of been at the forefront of this in the United States. And from an MLS side, they want to be ahead of the NBA and the NHL and MLB, especially those 3. And that's where they're trying to go with this deal. And it's off to a pretty good start.
And there is some, if you are a subscriber to Apple, I think there's some content in a few games that are going to be part of the Apple package that you don't have to pay the additional if you wanted to try it out for a couple of weeks and get a preview of what you think of it.
You can also, there's other ways. If you're a season ticket holder, you get it for free. If you're a T-Mobile subscriber, I think you get it for free. So there's a lot of like workarounds too.
Yeah. So, and a couple other things that I thought were pretty neat. I think they standardized the start times. I know there had been a lot of talk about so many teams started games at different times. I think they've got a 2 or 3 start times that they've standardized for all the games in the league. So kind of like the NFL, 1, 4:15, 4:25, and then 8:30 at night. What are the start times in MLS?
Yeah, so basically everything is Saturday evenings now. You'll get a Saturday early game at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and then pretty much the entire league will play between that 7:30 and 10 p.m. window. You know, the West Coast teams will start obviously later. Then they'll have a Sunday game or two highlighting a game of the week, and they've limited the number of midweek games. That was something that with MLS is a lot different than other soccer leagues around the world, in that it's a lot easier in a country like England to have a midweek game simply because the travel isn't that far. In Major League Soccer, the travel compared to other soccer leagues around the world is enormous. So that, and to be doing it over the length of time, think about it, it's twice the length of an NFL season. You know, an NBA season is not as like long in terms of duration of what you're putting your body through, thinking about running 90 minutes without stoppages. So to think of, you know, you can't sub like you can in hockey, right? So there are all these things that it was wearing on people's body. The travel was difficult. Now having a standardized time, what you've seen a lot introduced into the years, sports nutrition, sports fitness, and being able to make sure that the performance is up to being able to handle the rigors of that long schedule.
Let's talk about the new playoff format. Give us a little insight of what they've changed their playoff format a little bit. I think that first round they went to 2 out of 3. You know, home and give the audience a little update on the new playoff format.
Yeah, it's a hybrid model. It's a little bit like the NBA now with the 7-10 playing game and the 8-9 playing game. So there will be 9 teams that make the playoffs. That 8 and 9 matchup will be just a one-off, you know, play-in wild card game. It'll be played at the home of the 8th seed. And then from there, it's just your standard 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. That'll play a best of 3 with the higher seed having 2 of those home games. Absolutely no ties. So each game will have to have a winner, which I think is nice because it'll force, you know, teams to have to go out and score goals and win games. But after that opening round, it's back to just a one-off game at the higher seed to go the rest of the way, sort of like a sprint to the finish, if you will. And it's an exciting change. It comes with its pros, its cons. I personally would be a fan of if you're going to do the best of 3, do the best of 3 for more than just one round. Keep it going at least through the conference finals. That's just my opinion on it. But I do like the idea of doing that instead of a 2-legged race like they do in Europe, because it sort of disincentivizes the lower seeded team to just play defense and hope for a tie. That's really out the door with this new format.
I like it too. I'm with you. I want a winner. I mean, these playoff games, you don't want to see these games end in a draw and then you advance on away goals and all that stuff. I think the American sports fan wants to see winners and wants to see a finality. All right, talk about a couple of expansion teams. I've heard rave reviews about the St. Louis franchise with the beautiful stadium. Give us I know, is it St. Louis and San Diego? No, Charlotte. St. Louis and Charlotte are the new expansion teams.
Yeah, so Charlotte joined last year. They're in their second year, and St. Louis City joins this year and actually won their first ever game at Austin, who was number 2 in the Western Conference last year in a very exciting game. Because they're not, you know, as with all expansion teams, they're not expected to be very good this year. But there is a lot of hype. Obviously, the Midwest is somewhere that MLS would like to expand, and also into the Southwest. You mentioned San Diego. They are, along with Las Vegas, considered the 2 front runners for the 30th franchise that Commissioner Don Garber said they expect to announce at some point this season.
Vegas, it's going to Vegas.
Vegas most likely, but San Diego has a minor league team that does very well, and their women's team has set all sorts of records for attendance in the NWSL. So San Diego seen as this next sort of soccer hotbed. I mean, it's crazy to think of these expansion fees, though, right? I mean, St. Louis is buying in for $500 million when 8 years ago Toronto was buying in for $14 million. It just goes to show how much the league has just really grown to have right from day one. I mean, let's remember the days where almost every MLS team was playing in a football stadium with all the football grid lines on it. Now you've got St. Louis as this expansion team coming into this brand new hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, 30,000 beautiful seat stadium that they have right in the heart of St. Louis. It really just goes to show how we've always talked about soccer being up and coming, the next sport. Well, now it's really here because these buildings are tangible. These things are existing. And it's up to, honestly, the fans at this point to say, okay, I've said that if you bring it, I will come. Well,
Right.
it's here now. And that's really, I think, a testament to what Major League Soccer has done to build the sport here in the States.
And people don't realize St. Louis is a hotbed for soccer. It is a huge soccer market, collegiately, high school. I know growing up, in the old MISL St. Louis Steamers, they've had a lot of history in soccer, and they've produced a lot of great soccer players over the years that have gone on to play big time college soccer, MLS soccer, things like that. So St. Louis, you think St. Louis and soccer, but it really is a hotbed for soccer in North America here. All right. What do you think? I mean, do you think that does the league do a pretty good job to give these expansion teams an opportunity to compete early on, or is it more? How do you think they do as far as the expansion process to give these access to players?
Yeah, I think that especially in a sport like soccer that has a global market, it's very difficult for a team to compete right off the bat. I think in any sport, any expansion team, you saw it with Charlotte last year, who missed out on the playoffs. You saw it with Inter Miami as it took them a couple of years. Nashville is really starting to get going now too, as a better team. Austin was really the exception a couple of years ago that just came out steamrolling right off the bat. But I do think in terms of parity, there is no league in the world, especially when it comes to soccer, that has as much parity as MLS does. So often you see a team that was at the very top one year come all the way back down to earth the next. The rules are very designed to have any given weekend, any team can compete. You do have your sort of blue bloods in LAFC, Philadelphia Union have been very good in the recent years. Seattle Sounders, I think everybody kind of knows that name. Atlanta as well. Miami wants to be that, probably still a little bit ways away, but there is so much parity and so much fun to think that, last weekend, for example, a team like Miami that finished, that was struggling to make the playoffs for most of the year, just beat Montreal, who finished easily second in the East last year, and they beat them pretty handily 2-0 to start the year. So just goes to show from year to year, the constant contenders are changing.
All right, one more league question, then we'll get to Inter Miami. Talk about the transfer window. Obviously, if you don't follow soccer a lot, the way these teams can acquire players, there's different periods of time through the year that they can make moves for players. And the good thing is they don't have to just make moves within MLS. They can go buy a player from Mexico. They can go get a player from the Premier League theory. They can go to Italy. They can go to Germany in theory, and vice versa. Those other leagues will get players from MLS occasionally. Talk about that window and how that works.
Yeah, so there's two, and it works differently depending on what league you're in or what country you're in. There's the winter one, which is in January, and the summer one, which goes usually around July through August, heading into where most of the world goes, which is on an August to May calendar here in the United States because of winter and the challenges that we have to deal with professional football as well, taking up a lot of that calendar. MLS goes more of a March to October calendar. So the winter one is a little bit bigger, that just finished for MLS teams to come in or come out. MLS is unique in that it has a salary cap. Most soccer leagues around the world do not have it. They let owners just free spend, and it's actually a huge problem in global football, global soccer. You've probably heard about a lot of the corruption FIFA and UEFA have had to deal with in recent years. MLS is very structured to be financially stable throughout for years to come. They saw what happened with the NASL, decades ago. They don't want to end up as that 2.0. So with that, there are a lot of restrictions and a lot of rules. Teams have up to 3 what they're called designated players. These are your star players that they'll make the maximum salary that goes against the salary cap. But above that, you can pay them whatever you want. So let's say that number is at $600,000. I could pay a Messi $100 million, and he only counts $600,000 against the cap. So that's sort of a way that they've allowed for these 2 or 3 superstar players to come into each team and really grow the sport and have the talent without breaking the bank, unless an owner wants to.
All right, let's get to the team you cover on a daily basis. Inter Miami. Was this year 3 for Inter Miami?
4.
Okay. So give it. Obviously, people, if you don't know, David Beckham is part of the ownership group down in Miami. Obviously, the location's beautiful. With South Florida and everything. give us a little history lesson of Inter Miami and kind of where they're at now. I know they've made incremental improvements, and you guys are expecting big things this year.
Yeah, it's been a rocky one. Inter Miami has had one of the most interesting starts to a franchise in any sport. They obviously David Beckham is a part of his deal when he was a player in signing his MLS contract, got to purchase at a discounted rate an expansion team that wound up being Miami. So he is a part owner along with Jorge and Jose Mas. Who are the primary owners of the club. So it took a while for that process to happen. Then the league required that they had a stadium in place before they were allowed to proceed, something that a lot of other teams, you think of New York City FC that plays at Yankee Stadium, or Charlotte that plays at Bank of America Stadium where the Panthers play, they didn't have to deal with. So it took even a little bit longer. They now currently play at Lockhart, or the new Lockhart. They knocked Lockhart down, build a brand new, beautiful stadium on the same location. Yep. That holds one of the smaller stadiums, but it's only meant to be temporary while they are planning on building a stadium closer to Miami, right by the Miami International Airport. So in year one, that was obviously difficult because it was the COVID year. That was when the whole world stopped, and you had a lot of confusion. There was only 2 games into that season before they wound up stopping. They wound up getting about 23 games, so 2/3 of the season into that. And they expanded the playoffs because of that. So Inter Miami just snuck in as a playoff team that year because of an expanded playoff, lost right away, and that was that. Year 2, they had a new coach in Phil Neville. Fans will maybe remember him from Manchester United. He's now still the head coach. They had a rough year that year, but really made it a lot better, improved last year with a huge run of Gonzalo Higuain and his swan song of his career retiring in the offseason. They actually went all the way to being in the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference last year before getting knocked out by New York City, eventual Eastern Conference finalists. So a good season. They're expected to be a lot better this year. They want to challenge for home field advantage in the playoffs. It'll be a little bit of a task. They're not great outside of South Florida. They're very good in the heat and humidity of South Florida simply because they can outrun teams. So that's really their big advantage in how they come to play and what they hope for this season.
What has been the fan perspective down there? Are they sold out an arena? And when they're during the home matches, how's the support been? Obviously, it's a fickle crowd down in South Florida sometimes. There's so many allegiances to different teams all around the world, and even within MLS with so much of a population melting pot down in South Florida. How is Inter Miami attached to the fan base?
Yeah, La Familia, as they call themselves, is really amazing. There's different little pockets of them, and all together they form what they call La Familia. Which is these crazy fans. They take up a whole quarter of the stadium with pink smoke bombs and banners and flags and streamers they throw on the field. They've got big drums and trumpets in the stands, and these crazy chants that'll make you smile and laugh. They're a lot of fun. They love this team, and there is a unique culture, especially in Miami, with the South American, with the Cuban, with the Latin American audience that we have and the population that we have down here that is unique to other places around the country. That they do things a little bit differently, and they like it that way. It's a little bit more of a for the people type of atmosphere that they get, and it really has come with love from the club in return. You'll hear when you talk to players, we'll talk to a couple actually coming up here in a little bit. I'm going to head down to the stadium after I finish up with you. And in talking with them, that's the first thing that they always want to talk about. They love after every goal, they're right in the fans' faces. After every win, they're running up and cheering for the fans just as much. It's a really great relationship, and one that, as a soccer lover myself, it's great to see.
I'm going to save the last Miami question for last. I got one more U.S. question for you. What's the state of affairs with the U.S. men's national team and the head coach? I mean, Berhalter, we know, kind of under investigation. There's been no clarity about the finality of what that is. Where's the U.S. men's national team coaching selection at?
Yeah, it's bad. It's not in a great spot. They don't have any real leadership right now. Ernie Stewart left also as a part of the Claudio Reyna situation. Claudio Reyna left as well. It's very messy. I feel bad for all parties because is something that you would think as professional adults really would never come to something like that.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's where we are. Greg Berhalter does not have a contract, and honestly, I wouldn't expect him to get one. Just completely irrespective of this whole situation, he was out of contract. The team underperformed at the World Cup. And I don't think that the U.S. was making the next step with Greg Berhalter in charge. I think that they, maybe some of this situation showed that they need someone that understands player dynamics a little bit better. Greg Berhalter is known for being very stringent in his system and in what he considers. And one thing that this did expose was that there was a lot of behind the scenes helping my friends out and a little good old boys network revolving in US soccer that maybe was holding the federation back a little bit in that it was that 1994 US team that sort of all stuck together, and then all of a sudden 20 years 30 years later they're running the whole show. And maybe it's time to consider this as we're moving forward. What do we want United States soccer to look like? What is it respective to our fans, our culture, our community, our melting pot of the United States that we are? So you hope that that's what you get out of this, but right now it's not in a good shape, and they'll need to clean house as quickly as possible, as responsibly as possible.
And again, remember, folks, we host the next World Cup in 3.5 years. So you have the generation of players that you really think can do some damage. So this is a critical hire for U.S. soccer. Again, you've heard some names from the international world, potentially. I've heard Pep Guardiola's, a couple of these bigger names. Will U.S. soccer pay that kind of money for that kind of coach? Who knows? Will that kind of coach be interested? Who knows? But again, a critical hire in the next couple of months to get somebody, because again, this is probably the most attention U.S. soccer is going to probably get with everything that's coming here in the next several years and the generation of players that you got coming up.
And this will be the best chance in our lifetime for the United States to make a deep run into the World Cup, both because you're hosting it and with the generational talent that they have. You have to get this one right, because the United States will be one of those teams that will be expected, maybe not as favorites to win the whole thing, but to make a run, quarterfinals. Let's see, like in the next World Cup, the U.S. is going to be one of those teams that are talked about.
All right, last question, the $100 million question, if not more than that.
I can't guess what this is going to be.
A lot of speculation in the sports media world that one Mr. Lionel Messi might be Miami bound at some point, potentially this summer. If not this summer, then next year, for not say for sure, but a lot of speculation that he will maybe end his on-field playing career in MLS and in Miami. What are you hearing about that, and kind of what do you think the probability of happening this year versus next year are?
Yeah, so for it to happen this year, Miami themselves would need to make some moves underneath the salary cap in that summer window. Messi is out of contract come at the end of this season that he's at PSG. So he would be able to pick his team. It's also been talked about that maybe he goes back to Barcelona. He started from in Argentina, New Old Boys. They talked about possibly going there. So he's the greatest player of all time. He'll have his options of wherever he wants to go. From Miami's side of things, they've been in contact with his people. I've heard that they've discussed it. They've shown him the different ways that they think that he could fit in very well here, obviously from an on the field standpoint, but also in terms of Miami and continuing his brand and his global lifestyle that they think could facilitate this. And I think from there, if Lionel Messi wants to be an Inter Miami player, Lionel Messi will be an Inter Miami player. I don't think that there's anything stopping him. It's just whether or not he wants to do that or not.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that, again, that everybody remembers Pele coming to the NASL back in the day. This would be Pele times probably 5 when it comes to the media attention and all with social media and all that good stuff. So, all right, Ian, great stuff, man. I appreciate the time. Tell everybody where they can find all your great work online covering Inter Miami and all the other things that you do.
Yeah, we're at the Heron Outlet. You can find it at the Heron Outlet, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and follow our Substack. You can subscribe now, get our Substack, theheronoutlet.substack.com.
And Ian also does some great work with my buddy Matt Zemek. He helps produce some of Matt Zemek's podcast stuff. Matt Zemek, obviously, we all know, covers college hoops, college football, all college sports, and I know Ian is involved with Matt doing some of that stuff on that front. So appreciate the time, Ian. I appreciate it. We'll get you on board as we get through the MLS season a little bit and with some further updates. And keep up the great work, man.
Always fun talking to you.
Have a great day.